Alexander the Great, one of the most renowned military leaders and conquerors in history, left a legacy that reverberates through centuries of world history. His conquests spanned from Greece to Egypt, Persia, and even into India, creating one of the largest empires the world had ever seen. His name is synonymous with extraordinary military strategy, unyielding ambition, and an uncanny ability to unite a vast and diverse array of cultures under one banner. Yet, beyond his military prowess, Alexander's personal life and leadership have been subjects of deep fascination and scholarly debate. This chapter introduces the story of Alexander the Great, exploring his enduring influence on the world stage, the key events of his life, and the context that shaped his extraordinary rise to power. Born in 356 BCE in the ancient kingdom of Macedon, Alexander was the son of King Philip II and Queen Olympias. From the moment of his birth, the young prince's life seemed destined for greatness. His father, Philip, was one of the most formidable military strategists of his time, and his mother, Olympias, was a woman of exceptional political ambition and mystical beliefs. Alexander's early years were steeped in the dramatic unfolding of Macedonian politics, as his father's reforms and military campaigns were setting the stage for the empire that Alexander would later inherit. By the time he was a teenager, Alexander had already begun demonstrating the intelligence, leadership qualities, and military acumen that would define his later career. Alexander's education played a crucial role in shaping his worldview and ambitions. Perhaps one of the most defining aspects of his early life was his tutelage under the great philosopher Aristotle. Aristotle's teachings on philosophy, politics, and science helped shape Alexander's vision of leadership and governance. While Alexander's military career would eventually dominate his life, his education laid the groundwork for his intellectual curiosity and his desire to spread Greek culture throughout the regions he would conquer. The union of his martial and intellectual education created a ruler who would redefine the relationship between power, knowledge, and culture. Upon his father's assassination in 336 BCE, Alexander became king of Macedon at the age of 20. His ascension to the throne was met with immediate challenges, not only from within his own court, but from the various Greek city-states that had been under Macedonian control. Some questioned his ability to lead, as he was still young and had not yet proven himself in battle. However, Alexander quickly silenced his critics through decisive actions. He secured his rule over Macedon and swiftly moved to quell uprisings from the Greek city-states. His success in consolidating power in the early years of his reign revealed his military genius and determination to ensure Macedonian dominance in the region. One of Alexander's first major campaigns after becoming king was against the Persian Empire, the most powerful political entity in the ancient world. However, his ambitions reached far beyond mere military conquest. Alexander sought to avenge the Persian invasions of Greece decades earlier, particularly the burning of Athens by Xerxes I in 480 BCE. His campaign against Persia was not just a series of military engagements. It was a deliberate effort to assert Greek cultural superiority over the Persian Empire. Alexander's vision of uniting the East and West under a single banner became a central theme of his life and conquests. The Persian Empire, under King Darius III, stood as a formidable obstacle to Alexander's ambitions. The two first met in battle at the Granicus River in 334 BCE, where Alexander's forces triumphed against the Persians. This victory marked the beginning of a series of successes that would take him across Asia Minor, through the heart of Persia, and into Egypt. Alexander's campaigns against Persia were not merely military feats, but symbolized a cultural and political clash between the Greek and Persian worlds. His victory at the Battle of Issus in 333 BCE and his conquest of Egypt in 332 BCE cemented his status as one of the most influential figures in the ancient world. In Egypt, Alexander was hailed as a liberator and crowned as pharaoh, further solidifying his status as a ruler of both Eastern and Western worlds. It was in Egypt that he founded the city of Alexandria, a city that would become the intellectual and cultural capital of the Hellenistic world. His efforts to spread Greek culture throughout his empire, through the establishment of cities and the promotion of Greek language and traditions, had a lasting impact on the regions he conquered. His ability to integrate local customs with Greek ideals is a testament to his vision of a unified empire that embraced cultural diversity. Alexander's conquests continued eastward, with his army marching through Persia and into the vast lands of India. The battle at the Hydaspes River against King Porus in 326 BCE was one of Alexander's most difficult and daring victories. This encounter marked the easternmost point of Alexander's empire, as his army, exhausted from years of campaigning, refused to march further into India. Alexander's inability to expand further into the subcontinent marked the end of his relentless push for world domination. Despite the challenges he faced on the battlefield, Alexander's leadership remained unquestioned. His ability to inspire loyalty and devotion among his troops was unparalleled. He was not only a brilliant tactician, but also a visionary leader who saw the potential of blending Eastern and Western cultures. His soldiers, who had followed him through treacherous terrain and countless battles, were deeply loyal, and many viewed Alexander as a divine figure. His charisma and determination turned him into a mythic figure, someone who was revered as both a king and a god. The death of Alexander at the age of 32 in 323 BC sent shockwaves through the ancient world. His untimely demise left his empire without a clear successor, and the empire he had built soon fractured. Despite his premature death, Alexander's empire became the foundation for the Hellenistic era, a period marked by the spread of Greek culture, philosophy, and language across a vast swath of territory. His legacy lived on through the Hellenistic kingdoms that emerged from the ashes of his empire, and his influence continued to shape the course of history long after his death. In conclusion, Alexander the Great's life and legacy are a testament to the power of ambition, leadership, and vision. His achievements as a military leader and his efforts to blend diverse cultures left a lasting imprint on the ancient world. His name continues to be associated with greatness, not only in the realm of conquest, but also in the realms of governance, culture, and philosophy. The story of Alexander is one of extraordinary triumphs and profound challenges, a narrative that has captivated historians and scholars for centuries. As we explore the chapters that follow, we will delve deeper into the life of this remarkable figure and examine the enduring impact of his conquests on the world. Before Alexander the Great emerged as one of history's most influential conquerors, the world he inherited was a complex mosaic of rival kingdoms, empires, and cultures. To understand the remarkable rise of Alexander, it is crucial to explore the geopolitical landscape of the ancient world in the decades leading up to his reign. The dominant powers of the time were the Greek city-states, the Persian Empire, and smaller kingdoms in the Mediterranean and Near East. Each of these entities played a role in shaping the environment that allowed Alexander's ambitions to flourish. At the heart of this world lay the Greek city-states, independent and fiercely autonomous, each with its own political system, culture, and identity. The city-state of Athens, known for its intellectual achievements, was the leader of a group of city-states that formed the Delian League, an alliance created to defend against Persian invasions. Sparta, on the other hand, was a military oligarchy, renowned for its disciplined army and rigid social structure. These city-states, though often at odds with one another, shared a common cultural heritage and language, which would later provide Alexander with a foundation for uniting the Greek world in his conquest of the East. The relationship between these city-states was characterized by both cooperation and conflict. The Peloponnesian War, 431 to 404 BC, between Athens and Sparta epitomized the bitter rivalry that often divided the Greek world. Athens, with its democratic institutions and naval supremacy, clashed with Sparta's militaristic society and its domination of the Peloponnesian League. The prolonged war weakened the Greek city-states, leaving them fragmented and vulnerable to external threats. This internal strife made it difficult for the Greeks to unite against the growing power of the Persian Empire, which had been expanding under the leadership of kings such as Darius I and Xerxes I. The Persian Empire, which stretched from the Aegean Sea to the Indus River, was the most formidable empire in the ancient world. It was a vast and culturally diverse state, built on a system of satrapies or provinces, each ruled by a governor who reported to the king. The Persians were known for their administrative efficiency, vast infrastructure, and the ability to integrate different peoples into their empire. However, the empire was not without its challenges. Its vast size made it difficult to govern effectively, and its leaders often had to contend with rebellions and revolts from various regions. The Greek city-states, despite their internal divisions, had managed to resist Persian domination in the early 5th century BCE, notably through the combined Greek victory at the Battle of Plataea in 479 BCE, which ended the Persian invasion of Greece. In the years following the Persian retreat, the Greeks were left to rebuild their cities and their political systems. The rise of Macedon, a small kingdom on the northern fringe of the Greek world, would soon challenge the status quo. Macedon, under the leadership of King Philip II, began to emerge as a dominant force in the Balkans. Philip's military reforms and strategic alliances allowed Macedon to defeat the larger Greek city-states and establish control over much of the Greek peninsula. His success in uniting the fractured Greek world would set the stage for his son, Alexander, to embark on his own remarkable conquests. The political and military situation in Greece was marked by a certain degree of instability and fragmentation. The Greek city-states, though sharing a common language and cultural heritage, were often in competition with one another. The lack of unity among the Greeks had allowed external threats, such as the Persians, to exploit these divisions. However, the rise of Macedon under Philip II altered this balance. Philip's military genius, exemplified by his reforms in the Macedonian phalanx, allowed him to defeat much larger armies and expand his influence. By 338 BCE, after his victory at the Battle of Chaeronea, Philip had effectively brought most of the Greek city-states under Macedonian control, either by conquest or through diplomatic alliances. Philip's ambitions extended beyond Greece, as he set his sights on the Persian Empire. However, it was his assassination in 336 BCE that would abruptly change the course of history. With Philip's death, the throne passed to his 20-year-old son, Alexander. Though still young, Alexander inherited a kingdom poised for expansion, with a well-trained army and a powerful political position in Greece. However, his reign would not be without challenges. Alexander's ability to maintain control over the Greek city-states and secure his position as king would be crucial in setting the stage for his future military campaigns. One of the most significant challenges that Alexander faced early in his reign was the need to consolidate power within Macedon. Philip's death left behind a fragile political situation, with potential rivals and dissidents within the royal court. Alexander moved swiftly to eliminate opposition and secure his position. His first major action was to quell a rebellion in Thebes, which had risen against Macedonian rule. After decisively defeating the Thebans, Alexander demolished much of the city and sold its inhabitants into slavery, sending a strong message to other Greek city-states about his authority. With his position in Greece secured, Alexander turned his attention to the east, where the Persian Empire awaited. The Persian Empire, under the leadership of King Darius III, was in a state of disarray, weakened by internal strife and recent defeats. Although the Persian Empire was still a formidable force, it had been severely diminished by previous encounters with the Greeks, including the failed invasions of Xerxes I and the loss of key territories. Alexander recognized the vulnerability of the Persian Empire and seized the opportunity to strike, beginning a series of campaigns that would reshape the ancient world. In conclusion, the world before Alexander was one of great political complexity, marked by the rise and fall of powerful city-states, empires, and shifting alliances. The Greek city-states, though culturally united, were politically fragmented, and the Persian Empire, despite its vast territory, faced challenges of governance and internal unrest. The rise of Macedon under Philip II and the subsequent inheritance of the throne by Alexander set the stage for a series of conquests that would dramatically alter the course of history. Alexander's ability to unite the Greek world, coupled with his military genius and vision for empire, allowed him to challenge and ultimately defeat the Persian Empire, beginning a new era in the ancient world. Understanding the geopolitical landscape of the time is essential to appreciating the unprecedented nature of Alexander's accomplishments and the legacy he would leave behind. To understand the extraordinary success of Alexander the Great, it is essential to first examine the rise of Macedon under his father, King Philip II. Philip's reign, which began in 359 BCE, marked a turning point in the history of the ancient Greek world. Through a combination of military innovation, strategic diplomacy, and political acumen, Philip transformed the small, peripheral kingdom of Macedon into a dominant power in the Greek world. His achievements laid the groundwork for his son's future conquests, and it is impossible to fully appreciate Alexander's accomplishments without first understanding the legacy of his father. Before Philip II, Macedon was not considered a significant force in Greek politics. The kingdom was often viewed as a rural and somewhat barbaric state, existing on the margins of the Greek world. It lacked the intellectual and cultural prestige of Athens, or the military prowess of Sparta. Macedon's geographic location in the northern part of the Greek peninsula made it vulnerable to invasions and conflicts with neighboring tribes and kingdoms. However, Philip II recognized the potential of Macedon and set about transforming it into a powerful and unified kingdom capable of challenging the Greek city-states and even the mighty Persian Empire. One of Philip's most significant achievements was the reform of the Macedonian military. Faced with the need to defend his kingdom and expand its influence, Philip overhauled the traditional Greek hoplite army, which was based on heavy infantry. He introduced the Macedonian phalanx, a military formation that relied on long spears or sarissas and a highly disciplined, tightly packed infantry. The sarissa, which could be up to 18 feet long, gave the Macedonian soldiers a considerable advantage in battle, as it allowed them to strike at their enemies from a distance while maintaining an impenetrable defense. This innovative military strategy revolutionized warfare in the ancient world and became the cornerstone of Philip's military successes. In addition to the Macedonian phalanx, Philip also restructured his army to include specialized units, such as cavalry and archers, which complemented the infantry. He recognized the importance of mobility on the battlefield and the need for highly skilled and flexible forces. The Macedonian cavalry, which played a key role in many of Philip's victories, was particularly influential. Philip's forces were also trained in the use of siege weapons, enabling them to overcome fortified cities and strongholds. These military reforms gave Philip a highly effective and professional army that could be deployed for both defense and expansion. Philip's military innovations were complemented by his astute diplomacy. He understood that Macedon's success depended not only on military power, but also on the ability to navigate the complex political landscape of the Greek world. One of his primary strategies was to use marriage alliances to strengthen his political position. Over the course of his reign, Philip married multiple women from influential Greek and neighboring royal families, thereby securing alliances and neutralizing potential threats. He also used diplomacy to manipulate the often fractured Greek city-states, playing them off against one another and gaining their allegiance through a mixture of promises, threats, and bribes. A key moment in Philip's rise to power came in 338 BCE at the Battle of Chaeronea, where his forces decisively defeated a coalition of Greek city-states, including Athens and Thebes. This victory marked the end of any serious resistance to Macedonian dominance in Greece. After Chaeronea, Philip was able to secure his position as the hegemon of Greece, effectively uniting the Greek world under Macedonian leadership. Though the Greek city-states retained a degree of autonomy, they were now firmly under Philip's control, and the idea of a united Greece was no longer a distant dream, but a reality. With Greece under his control, Philip turned his attention to the Persian Empire, which was the most powerful and expansive state in the ancient world. His ultimate goal was to launch a campaign against Persia, both to avenge the Greek defeats suffered at the hands of the Persians in the early 5th century BCE and to expand Macedonian power eastward. To this end, Philip established the Corinthian League, a federation of Greek city-states, all of which were expected to contribute to the war effort against Persia. However, Philip's assassination in 336 BC meant that he would not live to see the execution of his grand plan. His death, though tragic, created an opportunity for his son, Alexander, to take the reins of Macedon and carry forward his vision. Despite the suddenness of Philip's death, Alexander quickly consolidated his position as king. He faced immediate challenges from within the royal court and among the Greek city-states, which were eager to test his leadership. However, Alexander demonstrated his military acumen and political savvy by swiftly dealing with dissenters, including the destruction of Thebes, which had rebelled against Macedonian authority. By eliminating internal threats, Alexander ensured that his rule was uncontested, and he was able to focus on the campaign against Persia that his father had planned. Philip's legacy also extended to the cultural and intellectual spheres. Under his reign, Macedon became a center of Greek culture, and the king himself was known for his appreciation of art, philosophy, and literature. Although Philip was a warrior king, he also recognized the importance of culture in solidifying his rule and enhancing Macedon's prestige. The historian and philosopher Aristotle, one of the greatest minds of the ancient world, was appointed as Alexander's tutor, and his teachings would have a lasting impact on the future conqueror. Philip's patronage of the arts and his promotion of Greek culture laid the groundwork for the spread of Hellenistic civilization, which would flourish under Alexander's empire. In conclusion, the rise of Macedon under Philip II was a pivotal moment in ancient history. Philip's military reforms, diplomatic strategies, and cultural patronage transformed his small kingdom into a dominant power in the Greek world. By uniting the fractious Greek city-states and defeating the Persian Empire's dominance, he set the stage for the grand ambitions of his son, Alexander. Philip's legacy was one of military innovation, political astuteness, and cultural influence, and it was these qualities that allowed his son to inherit a powerful kingdom capable of achieving the unprecedented conquests that would shape the ancient world. Understanding Philip's achievements is essential to understanding the success of Alexander the Great, for without his father's foundational work, Alexander's empire would not have been possible. To fully understand the remarkable leadership and ambition that defined Alexander the Great, one must first explore his formative years. Alexander's early life and education were critical in shaping his character, his vision of the world, and his strategies as a military leader. Born in 356 BCE in the ancient kingdom of Macedon, Alexander was the son of King Philip II and Queen Olympias, both of whom played significant roles in his upbringing. His early life was not only marked by royal privilege, but also by intense political and military challenges that would serve as the backdrop for his later conquests. However, it was his education, particularly under the tutelage of the philosopher Aristotle, that profoundly influenced his worldview and set him on the path to greatness. From an early age, Alexander displayed remarkable intelligence and a keen curiosity about the world around him. Unlike many other kings whose education was focused primarily on martial training, Alexander's upbringing was marked by a deep intellectual foundation. His mother, Olympias, was a strong and ambitious figure who nurtured Alexander's belief in his divine lineage. She often referred to him as the son of Zeus, which ingrained in Alexander the notion that he was destined for greatness. In contrast, his father, Philip, was a pragmatic ruler who focused on grooming his son to take over the throne and lead the Macedonian army. As a result, Alexander was exposed to both the intellectual and military realms from a very young age, preparing him for the complex responsibilities he would later inherit. At the age of 13, Alexander's education took a significant turn when his father appointed the philosopher Aristotle as his tutor. Aristotle, one of the most influential thinkers of the ancient world, provided Alexander with an education that went far beyond military training. Under Aristotle's guidance, Alexander was taught subjects such as philosophy, ethics, biology, literature, and politics. Aristotle's influence on Alexander was profound, as the young prince developed a lifelong appreciation for Greek culture and philosophy. This intellectual education would play a crucial role in shaping Alexander's approach to leadership, governance, and the integration of different cultures within his empire. Aristotle instilled in Alexander a deep respect for Greek ideals, particularly the concept of paideia, or the Greek ideal of education and culture. As a result, Alexander became not only a skilled warrior, but also a patron of the arts and sciences. His love of philosophy and learning would be evident throughout his life, as he sought to spread Greek culture across the vast territories he conquered. Alexander's admiration for Aristotle's teachings also manifested in his belief in the importance of knowledge and wisdom in governance, and he would often consult with scholars and philosophers throughout his military campaigns. This intellectual curiosity would distinguish him from other conquerors of his time, who were often more focused on sheer military might. During his youth, Alexander was also exposed to the realities of leadership and governance. As his father, Philip, was often engaged in military campaigns, Alexander was entrusted with the rule of Macedon on several occasions. One notable event occurred when Alexander was only 16 years old. During Philip's absence, Alexander was appointed regent of the kingdom. This experience gave him a taste of leadership, and it was during this time that he led a successful campaign against a rebellion in the north. Not only did Alexander secure a victory for Macedon, but he also founded a city, Alexandropolis, further cementing his reputation as a capable leader. Despite his early exposure to leadership, it was Alexander's military education that truly shaped his destiny. Macedon's military training was rigorous, and Alexander's education in warfare began at an early age. Under his father's supervision, Alexander was trained in the art of warfare, including the use of weapons, strategy, and the organization of troops. As a result, he became a highly skilled tactician and commander, capable of leading men into battle with both courage and precision. Philip's reforms to the Macedonian military, particularly the introduction of the phalanx and the use of cavalry, were passed down to Alexander, who would later apply these innovations in his campaigns. Alexander's ability to inspire loyalty and trust among his soldiers would prove essential in his future conquests, as his men were willing to follow him into the most perilous of situations. Moreover, Alexander was not just trained to be a soldier, but also to be a leader of men. His education emphasized the importance of charisma, confidence, and the ability to command respect. Alexander was taught that a king's power came not only from his military victories, but from his ability to inspire and lead his people. His interactions with soldiers and citizens alike demonstrated his innate ability to connect with others and foster loyalty. As a young prince, he understood the importance of both military might and moral authority in maintaining control over his kingdom and his army. His success as a military leader was not just a result of his tactical brilliance, but also his ability to unite and motivate those under his command. In addition to his intellectual and military education, Alexander was also exposed to the political realities of his time. His upbringing was characterized by a constant awareness of the fragile and volatile nature of power. His father, Philip, was a master of diplomacy, and Alexander learned from him the importance of alliances and political maneuvering. Although Alexander's early education emphasized military and philosophical subjects, he also absorbed his father's political acumen, which would later serve him well as he forged alliances and negotiated with various kingdoms during his campaigns. This combination of military expertise, intellectual curiosity, and political strategy made Alexander a uniquely qualified ruler, capable of both conquering vast territories and uniting them under his banner. The death of Philip II in 336 BC marked the beginning of Alexander's reign. At the age of 20, Alexander ascended to the throne of Macedon, a kingdom that had been significantly strengthened by his father's reforms. Despite his youth, Alexander was well prepared to assume the responsibilities of leadership. His education, which had been comprehensive and multifaceted, provided him with the tools necessary to navigate the complexities of ruling an empire. Alexander's early life, shaped by both intellectual and martial training, gave him a vision of leadership that was both pragmatic and visionary. He recognized the need for military power, but he also understood the importance of cultural and intellectual engagement in shaping the future of his empire. In conclusion, Alexander the Great's early life and education were fundamental in shaping the man who would become one of history's greatest conquerors. His upbringing, influenced by both his royal lineage and the intellectual guidance of Aristotle, equipped him with the skills and knowledge necessary for leadership. His exposure to military strategy, politics, philosophy, and governance gave him a unique perspective on the world, one that would guide his actions as he expanded the Macedonian Empire. Alexander's education was not merely a product of his time, but also a reflection of his character, one that blended intellect, ambition, and leadership. This combination of qualities would enable him to achieve greatness and to leave an indelible mark on history. The assassination of King Philip II in 336 BC marked a pivotal moment in Macedonian history, as it thrust the young Alexander, just 20 years old, onto the throne of a kingdom that had already been transformed into a formidable power. Despite his youth and inexperience, Alexander's immediate actions demonstrated a remarkable political astuteness and military acumen, allowing him to secure his rule over Macedon and the Greek city-states that his father had subjugated. His ability to consolidate power quickly, eliminate rivals, and establish himself as the legitimate successor to Philip is critical to understanding the trajectory of his reign and the subsequent expansion of his empire. Upon Philip's assassination, Alexander's first task was to assert his authority over the Macedonian court and army. His father's death had created a power vacuum, and there were several potential challengers to the throne, both within the royal family and among Macedon's nobility. Alexander acted swiftly to eliminate any threats to his rule. One of his first acts as king was to have the suspected assassins of his father executed, though it remains unclear whether Philip's death was the result of a conspiracy or simply a personal vendetta. Regardless, Alexander moved quickly to reinforce his claim and secure the loyalty of the Macedonian nobility, who had supported Philip's reign. Alexander's first major challenge came from within the Greek city-states. In the wake of Philip's death, several city-states, particularly Thebes, began to question the strength of the young king's leadership. The Greeks had been subjected to Philip's authority through military dominance and political manipulation, and many believed that Alexander, given his youth, might be less capable of holding the fragile coalition together. Thebes, in particular, took advantage of the opportunity to rebel, leading a brief but significant revolt against Macedonian rule. However, Alexander quickly proved that he was not only a skilled military commander, but also a ruthless political leader. Without hesitation, he marched south with his army to confront the Theban rebels. The Macedonian army, which had been thoroughly trained and was highly disciplined, crushed the Theban resistance decisively. The city of Thebes was utterly destroyed, and its inhabitants were either killed or sold into slavery. This brutal suppression sent a clear message to the other Greek city-states that any defiance against Macedon would be met with swift and overwhelming force. By destroying Thebes, Alexander not only eliminated a direct threat to his authority, but also demonstrated to the Greek world that he was fully capable of wielding the power and military prowess that had been the hallmark of his father's reign. With the rebellion in Thebes quashed, Alexander turned his attention to the larger geopolitical task of solidifying his control over the Greek city-states. Through a combination of force, diplomacy, and strategic alliances, Alexander secured the loyalty of the Greek states and ensured their participation in the Corinthian League, which had been established by his father as a means of consolidating Greek support for a unified campaign against the Persian Empire. Alexander's reign marked the continuation of Philip's policy of using Greek unity to achieve Macedonian dominance, and he was able to present himself as the legitimate heir of Philip's vision of Pan-Hellenic conquest. Beyond securing his position in Greece, Alexander also had to confront external threats. In the north, several barbarian tribes had long been a concern for Macedon's stability. To ensure that no potential threats existed at home, while he focused on expanding his empire, Alexander led a successful military campaign against the Thracian tribes and secured his northern borders. This allowed him to maintain peace at home and gave him the security needed to turn his focus southward, where his larger ambitions would soon take shape. In the meantime, Alexander's royal court began to take on an air of legitimacy and stability. He quickly surrounded himself with trusted generals and advisors who would accompany him on his campaigns. Some of these individuals, such as Parmenion and Antipater, had served under his father and were loyal to the Macedonian cause. Alexander's ability to inspire loyalty in his officers and soldiers was a key factor in his rapid consolidation of power. His personal charisma, combined with his proven military skill, made him a natural leader and helped solidify his control over the Macedonian army. Another critical element of Alexander's early reign was his ability to cultivate his image as a ruler. From the outset, he sought to present himself as the legitimate and divine heir to the Macedonian throne. He often emphasized his connection to the gods, particularly through his mother, Olympias, who had fostered the belief that Alexander was the son of Zeus. This divine association served not only to elevate Alexander's status, but also to strengthen his appeal to both his soldiers and the Greek city-states. His insistence on his divine lineage would become a central theme throughout his reign, helping to solidify his legitimacy in the eyes of both his Macedonian subjects and the peoples he would conquer. Moreover, Alexander's early reign was marked by his ambition to complete his father's grand design of conquering the Persian Empire. The idea of avenging the Greek defeats at the hands of the Persians in the early 5th century BCE had been a central part of Philip's vision, and it was one that Alexander inherited. He quickly began to make preparations for the campaign against Persia, assembling a massive army that would be capable of challenging the might of the Persian Empire. His decision to embark on this campaign was not just about military conquest, but also about fulfilling a vision of uniting the Greek world and establishing Macedonian dominance over the East. This grand ambition would become the driving force behind Alexander's military campaigns and his quest for glory. In addition to his military and political consolidation, Alexander's early years as king were also marked by his diplomatic efforts to secure the loyalty of neighboring states and potential allies. He worked to form alliances with various Greek and non-Greek rulers, including those in Asia Minor, in preparation for his eventual confrontation with the Persian Empire. These alliances were strategically important, as they provided both military support and valuable intelligence about the Persian Empire's strengths and weaknesses. By the time Alexander set his sights on Persia in 334 BCE, he had firmly established himself as both a military and political force. His decisive actions in securing his rule over Macedonia, the Greek city-states, and the northern borders demonstrated his capability as a ruler. Through a combination of military prowess, ruthless suppression of rebellion, and astute diplomacy, Alexander laid the foundation for the conquest of Persia and the creation of one of the largest empires in history. His ability to navigate the complexities of Macedonian politics, military command, and diplomatic relations set him apart from other rulers of his time. And it was this multifaceted approach to leadership that would define his reign. In conclusion, Alexander's ascension to the throne was marked by a swift consolidation of power and a remarkable ability to assert his authority over both internal and external threats. His decisive actions in quelling the Theban revolt, securing the loyalty of the Greek city-states, and stabilizing his northern borders established him as a strong and capable ruler. This early period of his reign laid the groundwork for his ambitious campaign against Persia, which would ultimately define his legacy. Alexander's leadership during these formative years demonstrated not only his military genius, but also his ability to inspire loyalty, cultivate alliances, and navigate the complex political landscape of the ancient world. His rise to power was the beginning of an extraordinary journey that would reshape the course of history. After consolidating his power in Greece and securing his northern borders, Alexander the Great embarked on his long-anticipated campaign against the Persian Empire in 334 BCE. The Persian Empire, under King Darius III, was the largest and most powerful empire in the ancient world, stretching from the Indus River in the east to the Aegean Sea in the west. For Alexander, the conquest of Persia was both a personal and political mission. His father, Philip II, had planned to invade Persia, and Alexander saw himself as the rightful heir to carry out that vision. The first major step in his campaign would be the conquest of Asia Minor, a critical region that would serve as the gateway to Persia. The Battle of the Granicus River, fought in May 334 BCE, marked the beginning of this epic campaign and set the stage for Alexander's future military successes. The Persian Empire's western provinces, including Asia Minor, were ruled by satraps or regional governors, who had limited loyalty to the central authority in Persia. Many of these satraps were wary of Alexander's ambitions, and their loyalties were often divided. As Alexander and his army advanced into Asia Minor, he sought to secure the allegiance of the local Greek cities and use them as allies in his campaign against the Persian satraps. The Greeks in these cities were eager to rid themselves of Persian rule and, in many cases, welcomed Alexander as a liberator. His strategic use of diplomacy, alongside his military prowess, played a crucial role in securing the initial foothold in Asia Minor. The Battle of the Granicus River occurred near the town of the same name, in what is now modern-day Turkey. The Persian forces, numbering around 20,000 to 40,000 men, were positioned on the opposite bank of the river, ready to defend against the advancing Macedonian army. Alexander's forces, which numbered approximately 35,000, included both infantry and cavalry, with the elite companion cavalry playing a prominent role. The river itself presented a natural obstacle, as it was wide and fast-flowing, making a direct crossing difficult. Nevertheless, Alexander, known for his boldness and tactical brilliance, chose to engage the Persians head-on, rather than waiting for an opportune moment to strike. The battle began with an attempt by Alexander to cross the Granicus River, a risky move that could have resulted in disaster had the Persian forces been able to exploit the Macedonian vulnerability during the crossing. However, Alexander's leadership and the discipline of his army were key factors in the success of the operation. As the Macedonian infantry waded across the river, the Persian forces, confident in their superior numbers, launched a series of attacks to disrupt the crossing. However, Alexander's forces held firm, and his cavalry, particularly the companion cavalry, led by Alexander himself, played a decisive role in breaking the Persian lines. Alexander's cavalry, renowned for its speed and maneuverability, successfully outflanked the Persian forces, attacking them from the sides and creating chaos within the Persian ranks. This tactic was a hallmark of Alexander's military strategy, as he frequently relied on the flexibility and mobility of his cavalry to create opportunities for victory. The Persian forces, overwhelmed by the Macedonian attack and lacking effective coordination, were quickly routed. Many Persian soldiers were killed, and a significant number were captured. The victory at the Granicus River was not only a significant military triumph, but also a psychological victory for Alexander. It demonstrated that his army, despite being outnumbered, was capable of defeating the Persian forces in open battle. The Battle of the Granicus River had several important consequences for Alexander's campaign. First, it secured his position in Asia Minor and allowed him to move further into Persian-controlled territories. The victory demonstrated to the Greek cities in Asia Minor that Alexander was a force to be reckoned with, and many of these cities soon pledged their allegiance to him. Additionally, the battle demonstrated the effectiveness of the Macedonian military reforms introduced by Philip II, particularly the use of the phalanx and cavalry in combined arms operations. Alexander's ability to seamlessly integrate these forces into his strategy was a key factor in his success at Granicus and would continue to be a defining feature of his military campaigns. Despite the success at Granicus, the battle also highlighted the challenges that Alexander would face in his campaign against Persia. The Persian Empire, with its vast territory and resources, would not be easily defeated. The satraps and local Persian forces in Asia Minor were still capable of mounting significant resistance, and Alexander's army would need to maintain its momentum to avoid becoming overstretched. However, the victory at Granicus provided Alexander with the confidence and experience needed to continue his campaign into the heart of the Persian Empire. It was clear that Alexander was not only a military genius, but also a master of psychological warfare, using his victories to demoralize his enemies and inspire his own troops. The aftermath of the battle saw Alexander's army continue its advance along the western coast of Asia Minor, liberating Greek cities and winning support from local populations. Alexander's strategy of presenting himself as a liberator of Greek cities under Persian control was highly effective, as many cities, such as Miletus and Halicarnassus, willingly opened their gates to him. His policy of offering autonomy to Greek city-states in exchange for their support created a solid base of operations for the Macedonian army. However, Alexander's success also drew the attention of the Persian king, Darius III, who realized the growing threat posed by the young Macedonian king and began to gather his forces for a counterattack. The victory at the Granicus River also had significant political implications. It marked the beginning of Alexander's rise as a leader not only of Macedon, but of a larger Hellenistic world. By defeating the Persian satraps and liberating the Greek cities of Asia Minor, Alexander set in motion his plan to unite the Greek world under Macedonian leadership and spread Greek culture across the ancient world. The political and cultural impact of this campaign would resonate long after Alexander's death, as the Hellenistic civilization he created would influence the Mediterranean world for centuries to come. In conclusion, the Battle of the Granicus River was a defining moment in Alexander the Great's conquest of Persia. The victory demonstrated Alexander's military genius, his ability to inspire his troops, and his capacity to integrate diplomacy with warfare. By securing his position in Asia Minor, Alexander laid the groundwork for his subsequent victories in the Persian heartland. The battle also highlighted the challenges that lay ahead, but it was clear that Alexander's determination, leadership, and tactical brilliance would shape the course of history. The conquest of Asia Minor was just the first step in Alexander's audacious journey, one that would ultimately lead him to the gates of Persia and beyond. After the victory at the Granicus River, Alexander the Great's march through Asia Minor continued with a sense of invincibility. His success at Granicus not only bolstered the morale of his troops, but also cemented his reputation as a military genius capable of taking on the might of the Persian Empire. However, the true test of Alexander's ability to confront the Persian king Darius III and his formidable forces would come at the Battle of Issus in 333 BCE. This battle would not only shape the course of the campaign, but also prove Alexander's exceptional strategic and tactical prowess, establishing him as one of history's greatest military commanders. The Battle of Issus was fought near the town of Issus, located on the northeastern coast of modern-day Turkey, between the forces of Alexander and Darius III. By this time, Darius had gathered a massive army, reportedly numbering over 100,000 soldiers, including infantry, cavalry, and war chariots. Darius's forces were drawn from all corners of the Persian Empire, a diverse and multi-ethnic coalition of soldiers. In contrast, Alexander commanded an army of about 35,000 to 40,000 men, a force significantly smaller than Darius's, but composed of highly disciplined Macedonian infantry and elite cavalry. The disparity in numbers between the two armies created an initial sense of uncertainty regarding the outcome of the battle. However, Alexander's superior tactics, bold leadership, and understanding of the battlefield would soon prove to be decisive. Unlike many of his contemporaries, who might have been deterred by the size of the Persian forces, Alexander understood that military victories were not just a matter of numbers, but also of strategy, coordination, and the ability to exploit weaknesses in the enemy's formation. This insight would prove crucial in the Battle of Issus. One of the key factors that influenced the outcome of the battle was the terrain. The battlefield at Issus was narrow and constrained by the mountains to the north and the Mediterranean Sea to the south, limiting the space in which Darius's larger forces could maneuver. This geographical disadvantage significantly neutralized the Persian numerical superiority and allowed Alexander to use his forces more effectively. While Darius was unable to fully deploy his massive army, Alexander could focus his forces in key areas, making it difficult for the Persians to utilize their full potential. As the battle began, Alexander's strategy was to attack the Persian right wing, where Darius himself was positioned with his elite guard. With his cavalry, Alexander led a direct assault against Darius's forces, hoping to breach the Persian center and strike directly at Darius, thereby causing disarray in the Persian ranks. This was a bold and risky maneuver, but Alexander's ability to read the battlefield and his courage to take risks were essential to his success. By targeting Darius's position directly, Alexander sought to destabilize the Persian command and create a psychological shock that would undermine the cohesion of the entire Persian army. The Macedonian forces, with their disciplined phalanx and expert cavalry, made significant progress in pushing back the Persian right wing. Meanwhile, the Persian left wing, though initially more successful, was unable to respond effectively to Alexander's decisive blows to the right. The key turning point came when Darius, seeing the collapse of his right flank and the mounting pressure on his position, chose to flee the battlefield. His retreat was a critical moment in the battle, as it signaled the collapse of Persian morale. In the wake of Darius's flight, the Persian army lost its coordination, and Alexander's forces capitalized on this disarray. The Battle of Issus was a resounding victory for Alexander, and the consequences of this victory were far-reaching. Not only did it destroy the core of Darius III's army, but it also forced the Persian king to flee, leaving behind his family, treasure, and personal belongings. Alexander's pursuit of the Persian king's retreating forces allowed him to capture the Persian royal family, including Darius's mother, wife, and children, further humiliating the Persian ruler and demonstrating Alexander's ability to exploit every opportunity for psychological and political advantage. The capture of Darius's family was a key moment in Alexander's campaign. Instead of executing them, Alexander treated them with respect and sought to portray himself as a liberator and a protector of Persian royalty. This act was part of his broader strategy to win over the Persian population and legitimize his rule over the conquered territories. By demonstrating mercy and offering them protection, Alexander sought to appeal to the Persian elite and encouraged affections from Darius's ranks. This diplomatic maneuvering helped Alexander consolidate his control over the regions he had conquered, as many local Persian leaders began to view him as a viable alternative to the embattled Darius. The victory at Issus also had a significant psychological impact on both the Macedonian and Persian forces. For the Macedonians, the battle was a moment of vindication and confidence. It proved that Alexander's smaller but more disciplined army could defeat a much larger force, reinforcing his reputation as a brilliant tactician and inspiring his troops with the belief that victory was always within their grasp. For the Persians, however, the defeat was a crushing blow. Darius's inability to defend his empire from the upstart Macedonian king was a severe blow to Persian pride and morale. The loss of Issus, combined with the subsequent loss of territories, weakened Darius's hold on power and demonstrated the vulnerability of the Persian Empire. From a strategic standpoint, the victory at Issus opened the door for Alexander to continue his advance into the heart of the Persian Empire. With Darius in retreat, Alexander was able to move southward along the Levantine coast, capturing key cities such as Damascus and Tyre. The momentum gained from the battle allowed him to proceed with greater ease, as many cities surrendered without a fight, hoping to avoid the devastation that had been inflicted on Thebes and other rebellious Greek cities. The psychological advantage gained at Issus helped Alexander maintain the initiative throughout the remainder of his campaign. However, while the victory at Issus was significant, it did not signal the end of Alexander's struggles in the east. Darius III, despite his defeat, was not fully vanquished. He would regroup, raise a new army, and attempt to confront Alexander once more at the Battle of Gaugamela in 331 BCE. Nonetheless, the Battle of Issus marked a turning point in the Persian campaign, as it demonstrated Alexander's military brilliance, his ability to use terrain to his advantage, and his aptitude for exploiting his enemies' weaknesses. It solidified his position as a conqueror of destiny, a man who could not be deterred by the scale of his enemies or the challenges in his path. In conclusion, the Battle of Issus was a defining moment in Alexander the Great's conquest of the Persian Empire. It was a testament to his strategic genius and his ability to outmaneuver a much larger force through tactical brilliance and decisive leadership. The victory not only destroyed the heart of Darius III's army, but also elevated Alexander's status as a leader capable of defeating the greatest empire in the ancient world. The capture of Darius's family and his subsequent flight signaled a shift in the balance of power in the region, and the victory at Issus set the stage for the further expansion of Alexander's empire, marking the beginning of the end for the Persian Empire. The conquest of the Persian Empire was a monumental task that required not only military brilliance, but also a level of perseverance and strategic thinking that would define Alexander the Great's campaigns. After his significant victory at Issus and subsequent advance through the Levantine coast, Alexander encountered his next major obstacle, the city of Tyre. Tyre, a Phoenician port city on an island off the coast of modern-day Lebanon, was one of the most fortified and important cities in the eastern Mediterranean. Its strategic location and its status as a major center of trade and naval power made it an essential target for Alexander if he were to establish control over the eastern Mediterranean and secure his military route to Egypt. The city of Tyre was particularly challenging for Alexander due to its location. Tyre was situated on an island about half a mile from the mainland, which made it almost impenetrable by traditional siege methods. The city's walls were high, thick, and reinforced, and the Tyrians had strong naval forces, which ensured that any attempt to blockade the city from the sea would be met with resistance. In addition, Tyre was heavily fortified with defensive mechanisms, including powerful towers, which provided a significant advantage to the defenders. For Alexander, Tyre represented more than just a military target. It was a symbol of the resistance he would face as he attempted to expand his empire. The city's defiance was seen as a direct challenge to his authority, and its conquest would prove essential for his plans to control the eastern Mediterranean and push into Egypt. The siege of Tyre began in January 332 BCE, immediately after Alexander had completed his conquest of the Persian satrapies in Asia Minor. The first challenge was the construction of a causeway, which would allow his army to reach the walls of Tyre and engage in direct assault. Alexander's engineers, under his personal supervision, devised an ambitious plan to build a causeway that would connect the mainland to the island. This was no small feat. The causeway had to stretch over 200 meters across the deep waters, and it was vulnerable to attacks from the Tyrian navy. The task was made more complicated by the fact that the Tyrians were using their fleet to prevent the Macedonian army from completing the causeway, effectively turning the siege into a contest of engineering and naval power. Undeterred, Alexander deployed his naval forces to combat the Tyrian fleet. A series of naval skirmishes ensued, with Alexander's forces gradually gaining the upper hand. The Macedonian navy was relatively small compared to the Tyrian fleet, but Alexander's leadership and the skill of his sailors played a crucial role in securing victories at sea. Through these naval engagements, the Macedonian forces were able to block supplies to the city and weaken the Tyrian resistance. This provided Alexander with the opportunity to complete the causeway. Despite the Tyrians' efforts to disrupt the construction, the Macedonian engineers, working day and night, managed to advance the causeway, using it as a platform for siege engines, including battering rams and catapults, which would prove vital in breaching the city's walls. As the causeway grew closer to the city's walls, the defenders of Tyre intensified their counterattacks, employing a variety of methods to slow the Macedonian progress. The Tyrians launched fire ships, boats filled with combustible material, in an attempt to burn the causeway and the siege engines. These fire ships were a formidable threat, but Alexander's forces, relying on their discipline and quick thinking, were able to put out the flames and continue their construction. The Tyrian navy also attempted to break the siege by launching a massive naval assault, but this was repelled by Alexander's forces, who had now established naval superiority in the area. As the siege continued, the morale of the Tyrians began to deteriorate. The siege lasted for several months, and by the summer of 332 BCE, the Macedonian army had succeeded in bringing siege towers, battering rams, and other siege equipment to the walls of the city. Alexander's persistence in maintaining the siege, despite the Tyrians' stubborn resistance, was a testament to his strategic brilliance. He understood that the fall of Tyre would be a turning point in his campaign, not only because of its strategic importance, but also because of its symbolic value. The Tyrians' defiance was seen as a challenge to his authority, and their defeat would send a powerful message to other cities in the region that resistance to Alexander was futile. In addition to his military tactics, Alexander employed psychological warfare to weaken the resolve of the defenders. He offered terms of surrender to the Tyrians on several occasions, proposing that they could retain their city and independence if they accepted his rule. However, the Tyrians rejected these offers, determined to resist at all costs. Alexander's response was to tighten the siege and ensure that the Tyrians were cut off from outside support. This relentless pressure eventually led to the collapse of Tyre's defenses. In July 332 BCE, after more than 7 months of siege, the Macedonian forces breached the walls and stormed the city. The capture of Tyre was a bloody affair. After the breach, Alexander's forces moved quickly to secure the city, killing many of the defenders and enslaving others. The city's wealth and its strategic position as a major trading hub were of great importance to Alexander, and he took advantage of the victory by appropriating the spoils of war. Tyre's naval fleet was either destroyed or captured, further consolidating Alexander's control over the Mediterranean. However, despite the destruction, Alexander allowed the Tyrian inhabitants who survived the siege to rebuild the city, giving it a new purpose as part of his growing empire. The fall of Tyre had several important consequences for Alexander's campaign. First, it eliminated a key naval threat to his control of the eastern Mediterranean. With Tyre under his control, Alexander could now secure safe passage for his navy and trade routes, facilitating further conquests in Egypt and beyond. Additionally, the victory sent a powerful message to other cities in the region. Resistance to Alexander would be met with overwhelming force, and no city, no matter how well fortified, was beyond his reach. The brutality of the siege and the subsequent destruction of Tyre reinforced Alexander's reputation as a conqueror who would stop at nothing to achieve his objectives. Moreover, the siege of Tyre demonstrated Alexander's ability to adapt to challenging situations. Faced with an island city and a determined defense, he employed a combination of engineering ingenuity, naval warfare, and psychological tactics to break the resistance. The perseverance required to maintain the siege for months, as well as the ability to inspire loyalty in his soldiers, were hallmarks of Alexander's leadership. His victory at Tyre solidified his image as a leader capable of overcoming the most difficult challenges, and it reinforced his belief in the necessity of unwavering persistence in the face of adversity. The fall of Tyre also marked the final phase of Alexander's campaign in the Levant. With the city's capture, Alexander turned his attention southward towards Egypt, where his next major conquest awaited. The success of the siege not only secured his military and economic position in the region, but also strengthened his political standing. The people of Egypt, like those of other regions, would soon view Alexander as a liberator from Persian rule, a title that further solidified his divine and political legitimacy. The Siege of Tyre, one of the most challenging military operations of his career, demonstrated Alexander's capacity to achieve victory through determination, innovation, and a relentless pursuit of his goals. In conclusion, the Siege of Tyre was a crucial episode in Alexander the Great's campaign, exemplifying his military ingenuity, strategic vision, and persistence. It was a difficult and costly conquest, but it was essential for his control over the eastern Mediterranean and his broader ambitions in the Persian Empire. Through the use of advanced siege techniques, naval superiority, and psychological tactics, Alexander overcame a formidable opponent and sent a powerful message to his adversaries. The victory at Tyre was not only a military triumph, but also a symbol of Alexander's unyielding determination, setting the stage for his next major conquest in Egypt and his ultimate confrontation with Darius III. After the fall of Tyre, Alexander the Great's march through the eastern Mediterranean continued with momentum and success, setting his sights on Egypt. In 332 BCE, the region was still under the control of the Persian Empire, and its strategic importance for Alexander's campaign could not be overstated. Egypt was not only a vital agricultural and economic center, but it also held cultural and religious significance as the gateway to Africa and a key part of the ancient world's trade routes. As Alexander approached the Egyptian frontier, he understood that conquering Egypt would solidify his control over the eastern Mediterranean, further weaken the Persian Empire, and enhance his own political and divine status. However, Alexander's approach to Egypt was markedly different from his approach to other cities and regions he had conquered. While he had faced fierce resistance in places like Tyre and Thebes, the Egyptians greeted him not with hostility, but with open arms. This warm reception can be attributed to several factors. The Persian Empire had ruled over Egypt for nearly 2 centuries, and the Egyptian population had long resented their foreign rulers. The Persians had heavily taxed and oppressed the Egyptians, diminishing their autonomy and disrupting their religious practices. Many Egyptians saw Alexander as a liberator, someone who could restore their independence and traditional way of life, a sentiment that played a crucial role in facilitating his peaceful entry into the region. Upon his arrival in Egypt, Alexander was met with a grand reception. The Egyptian priesthood, which had a powerful influence over the population, hailed him as a divine figure, and many believed that he was the fulfillment of a prophecy that foretold the coming of a great ruler from the West. This idea was reinforced when Alexander visited the Oracle of Ammonius at the Siwa Oasis, a revered site in the Egyptian desert. According to historical accounts, Alexander sought confirmation of his divine status from the oracle, and the priest's declaration that he was the son of Zeus Ammon, the king of the Greek gods, provided the validation he needed. In Alexander's eyes, this divine affirmation not only legitimized his rule, but also solidified his claim as the rightful ruler of Egypt and a god among men. This religious endorsement played a significant role in Alexander's efforts to consolidate his power in Egypt. Upon being declared the son of Zeus Ammon, Alexander began to adopt symbols of Egyptian royalty, donning traditional Egyptian attire and incorporating elements of Egyptian religious rituals into his own. His identification with the gods was central to his image as a ruler, and in Egypt, he sought to combine the divine right of the pharaohs with his own Macedonian heritage. Alexander's acceptance of Egyptian customs and the promotion of himself as a pharaoh allowed him to gain the loyalty and support of the Egyptian people, furthering his hold over the region. Beyond the religious and symbolic aspects of his rule, Alexander was keenly aware of Egypt's strategic importance. To secure his control over the region and to safeguard his military campaign, Alexander focused on establishing strong infrastructure. One of his most significant achievements in Egypt was the founding of the city of Alexandria, a move that would have lasting implications for the history of the Mediterranean world. Situated on the coast of the Nile Delta, Alexandria quickly became a major center of trade, culture, and learning. Its natural harbor, which was one of the best in the Mediterranean, allowed it to flourish as an economic hub. The city was intended to be a testament to Alexander's legacy, and over time, it would become one of the most important cities of the Hellenistic world. The foundation of Alexandria was not merely a military or economic decision. It was a symbol of Alexander's vision for the future of his empire. The city was designed with a combination of Greek and Egyptian elements, reflecting Alexander's ambition to create a fusion of cultures under his rule. He encouraged Greek settlers to move to the city, fostering a blend of Greek and Egyptian traditions that would define Alexandria as a cosmopolitan center. The city would eventually house the Great Library of Alexandria, which would become the most important library in the ancient world, drawing scholars and intellectuals from across the empire. Through Alexandria, Alexander's vision for a unified empire that transcended cultural boundaries began to take shape. In addition to his founding of Alexandria, Alexander also sought to ensure the stability of Egypt by dealing with any remnants of Persian influence. The satrap of Egypt under the Persian Empire, a man named Mazax, surrendered to Alexander without a fight. Alexander's ability to take control of Egypt without significant resistance was a testament to the strategic importance of the region and the goodwill he had earned by presenting himself as a liberator. His calm approach to governance, combined with his religious association with the Egyptian gods, allowed him to maintain peace and stability in Egypt while preparing for his future military campaigns. While Alexander's conquest of Egypt was largely peaceful, it still marked a crucial moment in the broader context of his military campaign. It provided him with a secure base of operations for his campaign against Persia and allowed him to strengthen his reputation as a military and divine ruler. The Egyptians' willingness to accept him and the prestige he gained from their support only served to bolster his sense of invincibility as he continued his march toward Persia. However, Alexander was not content to simply conquer Egypt. He aimed to reshape the region and integrate it into his grand vision of an empire that stretched from Greece to India. Alexander's time in Egypt also gave him the opportunity to reflect on his ambitions. While his conquest of Persia was still his primary goal, Egypt offered him a moment to pause and consolidate his gains. The foundation of Alexandria and his acceptance of Egyptian religious practices were not mere acts of political strategy. They were part of his broader vision to create an empire that was not just Greek in character, but one that blended the best aspects of the cultures he encountered. By embracing Egyptian traditions, Alexander sought to transcend the limitations of Greek identity and forge a new, universal identity for his empire. The conquest of Egypt also marked a critical point in Alexander's personal development. His experiences in Egypt allowed him to further refine his sense of self-identity, not just as a king, but as a godlike figure. The oracle at Siwa, in particular, provided Alexander with a sense of divine purpose that would guide his actions for the remainder of his life. His identification with the gods gave him an air of invulnerability, reinforcing the idea that he was destined for greatness. This belief in his divine right to rule became a central aspect of his personality, shaping his decisions and actions as he continued his campaign toward Persia and beyond. In conclusion, Alexander's conquest of Egypt was a crucial chapter in his campaign, not only because of its strategic importance, but also because of its symbolic significance. By presenting himself as both a liberator and a divine ruler, Alexander secured the loyalty of the Egyptians and established a strong foothold in the Eastern Mediterranean. The founding of Alexandria, in particular, marked a lasting legacy of Alexander's vision for a unified, cosmopolitan empire. His time in Egypt solidified his status as a world conqueror and set the stage for the next phase of his campaign, the ultimate showdown with Darius III and the Persian Empire. Through his conquest of Egypt, Alexander proved that his ambition knew no bounds and that his reach extended across cultures, religions, and empires. The death of Alexander the Great in 323 BCE, at the age of 32, marked not only the end of his remarkable military campaign, but also the conclusion of an era that had reshaped the ancient world. His brief life and meteoric rise to power left a profound impact on history, establishing a legacy that would resonate through the ages. Alexander's accomplishments, both in military conquest and cultural assimilation, transcended the political boundaries of his time. His death, however, also precipitated a period of uncertainty and division, as his vast empire, created through war and diplomacy, was left without a clear successor. Alexander's life and achievements remain central to the study of ancient history, and his legacy continues to influence the political, cultural, and intellectual spheres of the modern world. At the time of his death, Alexander had succeeded in creating one of the largest empires the world had ever seen. His conquests spanned from Greece and Asia Minor to Egypt and India, stretching across 3 continents and uniting a vast array of cultures, languages, and peoples. Alexander's empire was, in many ways, a product of his vision for a world united under his rule, where the distinctions between East and West would blur, and where Greek culture and ideas would intermingle with the rich traditions of the East. The cities he founded, such as Alexandria and Egypt, were designed not only as military and economic hubs, but as cultural centers where Greek philosophy, art, and language could take root in foreign lands. This cultural diffusion, known as Hellenization, became one of Alexander's most enduring legacies, influencing the regions he conquered long after his death. The idea of Hellenization was not solely a product of Alexander's military conquests. It was also a result of his personal philosophy. Alexander's belief in the fusion of Greek and Eastern cultures was rooted in his view that the greatest civilizations of the ancient world could coexist and enrich one another. In many ways, he saw himself as a bridge between these cultures. His adoption of Persian dress and customs, as well as his efforts to integrate local elites into his administration, reflected his desire to create a more harmonious world. This blending of cultures would have a lasting influence on the regions he conquered, shaping the development of the Hellenistic period, which was characterized by the spread of Greek culture throughout the ancient world. Yet, despite his vision of unity and cultural exchange, Alexander's death left his empire in a state of fragmentation. Without a clear heir to his throne, the vast empire he had created was divided among his generals, known as the Diadochi, who fought amongst themselves for control. These wars of succession resulted in the eventual splitting of the empire into several Hellenistic kingdoms, including the Seleucid Empire, the Ptolemaic Kingdom of Egypt, and the Antigonid Kingdom in Macedonia. Although Alexander's empire was never fully reunited, his vision of a unified world continued to influence the political landscape of the Hellenistic world. The legacy of his conquests also continued to shape the development of the Roman Empire, which would later inherit and expand upon many of the cultural and political ideas introduced by Alexander. One of the most significant aspects of Alexander's legacy was his influence on the concept of kingship. His combination of military prowess, strategic genius, and divine self-image set a new standard for rulers across the ancient world. The idea that a king could be both a military leader and a divine figure was not new, but Alexander's ability to embody this dual role was unprecedented. His portrayal as the son of Zeus Ammon, alongside his military victories and cultural assimilation, contributed to the idealization of the ruler as a god-king in the ancient world. This concept would later influence the Roman emperors, who adopted similar titles and practices to elevate their status and authority. Alexander's ability to command not only the loyalty of his soldiers, but also the devotion of his subjects marked a shift in the way power and kingship were perceived, creating a model that would endure for centuries. Furthermore, Alexander's impact on military strategy and tactics cannot be overstated. His campaigns introduced innovative approaches to warfare, which became the foundation for future military leaders. The use of the phalanx formation, combined with cavalry units, provided a highly effective method of combat that was utilized by subsequent armies. Alexander's ability to adapt to diverse terrains and enemy forces also set him apart from other military leaders. His emphasis on speed, mobility, and flexibility allowed him to achieve victories even when faced with seemingly insurmountable odds. The tactical lessons learned from Alexander's campaigns were studied and emulated by later military leaders, including the Romans, Napoleon Bonaparte, and others throughout history. In the realms of culture and philosophy, Alexander's conquests helped to spread Greek ideas far beyond the borders of Greece itself. The cities he founded, particularly Alexandria in Egypt, became centers of learning and intellectual exchange. The Great Library of Alexandria, established by the Ptolemies, housed the knowledge of the ancient world and became a symbol of the Hellenistic commitment to preserving and advancing human knowledge. Greek philosophy, including the works of Aristotle, Plato, and other thinkers, found new audiences in the regions conquered by Alexander. The cross-cultural exchanges that took place in these cities helped to advance fields such as mathematics, astronomy, and medicine, contributing to the intellectual flourishing of the Hellenistic world. Despite the positive aspects of Alexander's legacy, his reign and the subsequent division of his empire also left behind a complex and sometimes contradictory legacy. His quest for personal glory and the expansion of his empire often came at a great cost. The destruction of cities like Thebes and Tyre, as well as the heavy toll his military campaigns exacted on both his soldiers and the populations he conquered, raised ethical questions about the nature of empire building and the price of conquest. Furthermore, the power struggles that followed his death led to a period of instability in the Hellenistic world, as his generals vied for control and the unity of his empire disintegrated. The empire Alexander built, though vast and influential, was short-lived and fractured after his death, leading some to question the sustainability of his imperial vision. The question of Alexander's true legacy is also complicated by his early death. Had he lived longer, it is possible that his empire could have become a more cohesive and lasting entity. His ambitions were far-reaching, and there is little doubt that he intended to continue his conquests, possibly pushing further into India and even across the Arabian Peninsula. However, his untimely death meant that his grand designs were never fully realized. Despite this, Alexander's accomplishments during his lifetime were extraordinary, and his vision for a global empire set a precedent for future rulers. The fact that his empire, though divided, continued to exert influence long after his death is a testament to the lasting impact he had on the ancient world. In the centuries following his death, Alexander's legacy became intertwined with myth and legend. Stories of his greatness were passed down through generations, with later rulers seeking to align themselves with the ideals and accomplishments associated with him. His image was used to legitimize the rule of subsequent kings, and his campaigns became the subject of countless works of art, literature, and historical narrative. In the modern era, Alexander the Great has remained a figure of fascination and admiration, embodying the ideal of the heroic conqueror and the visionary leader. In conclusion, the legacy of Alexander the Great is multifaceted and enduring. His military conquests, cultural impact, and influence on kingship and strategy have shaped the course of history for centuries. While his empire was short-lived and fragmented after his death, his vision of a world united under his rule lived on through the Hellenistic kingdoms and the Roman Empire. Alexander's ability to fuse cultures, his tactical brilliance, and his ambitious vision continue to serve as a model for leaders and thinkers throughout history. The legacy of Alexander the Great is not confined to his conquests, but extends to the way in which his ideas, ambitions, and actions influenced the development of the ancient and modern worlds. His story, while marked by personal and political contradictions, remains one of the most significant and transformative in the history of human civilization.